Oh.
Yeah!
One-stop shopping.
20th century.
Oh, shit.
You are fined 1 credit for a violation of the verbal morality statute.
Yes! Now, this is what I'm talking about.
You want a war? Or do you want to just give me a gun?
Somebody please get this man a gun.
Okay, so what do you need?
Guns. Lots of guns.
Hey, Larken Rose here. I did not grow up in the gun culture. My parents, as far as I know, never owned guns. They were conservative / constitutionalist / libertarian, whatever. They believed in the Second Amendment and the right to keep and bear arms, but they just never had any themselves. I guess they just thought where they lived, they didn't need it. And that was kind of true. Lived in a very safe place when I was growing up and didn't have any. And so, like a lot of Americans, my only exposure to guns was a fake exposure. It was TV and movies, where the only people who ever have guns are agents of the state, cops and soldiers, and scary bad guys.
I joined the army to see the world, not this.
Get hold of yourself, son. You're an American soldier. We got a firefight in our hands. All right, you dick bunch of sons of bitches. I'm pulling your tired, ugly asses right back to hell.
And when that is your only exposure, when that is the only context in which you see firearms over and over again, it totally has a psychological impact on your feelings and the associations you have with firearms. Meanwhile, many millions of Americans grew up around guns and had them when they were growing up and saw them everywhere and went shooting with their friends and all that. And they have a completely different perception. And when it comes to this gun control debate, to me, a huge factor of it that doesn't even get mentioned very often is just that experiential component of whether somebody has ever been around them or not. Because I remember the first time I actually saw somebody other than a cop with a gun in real life. And it was when I was down in Atlanta visiting a brother of mine who came back from work, and he takes off his suit jacket and he's wearing a holstered .357 Magnum underneath. And I was sort of like, whoa, because to me that was totally unusual. To him it wasn't. To a zillion other people it isn't at all. But to me it was unusual. It wasn't scary. I didn't think he was going to shoot me or anything. But it was still, because it was this taboo thing. And again, I was philosophically not against guns at all, but still there's this psychological thing of, oh my God, a gun. Because people who aren't around them and aren't used to being around them perceive them as this weird, taboo, magical, scary thing. And those are the people who cheer for gun control. And those are the people who, when there's a shooting or something, they say, oh my God, those things are horrible and scary and I'm terrified of them and nobody should have them. And they don't understand how much their limited perspective and experience is leading to feels and emotions that make them think that way when it has nothing to do with logic. The difference would be if somebody who had, lived off in the middle of nowhere in some other country and had no experience with automobiles, and then saw a video of like that person crashing into a crowd and hurting a bunch of people and killing somebody with an automobile. From their perspective, they can be, whoa, that's a big, dangerous machine that can kill people. Nobody should have them. Whereas people who live around cars all their lives and they're driving around, never in a million years would they see something like that and say, nobody should have cars. That's just ridiculous. Likewise, the people who grew up around guns and the several million Americans who own AR-15s, not to mention the tens of millions of people who own other guns, when they hear, oh my gosh, there was a shooting over here, they don't think, well, those should totally be banned. It's only the people who have this emotional reaction because they have no experience and it's unfamiliar. Because what's unfamiliar is automatically scary to almost everybody. Allow me to demonstrate. When I hold up this, which is my AR-15, a lot of people will have the reaction of, oh, he has a gun. Meanwhile, many millions of other people will be like, oh, cool, yeah, I have one of them, or I have one that's sort of like that, but it's the newer model with a... Because it's just a thing. And now that I'm accustomed to them, and I've owned my own for years, and they're not a taboo, weird thing, it's so foreign and strange to me to watch people who get all that emotional about a thing, as if this is to blame. Now, consider the perspective that when some shooting happens, and let's just pretend that the mainstream version of the story is what happened, even though almost always in these shootings the mainstream version is completely bogus. But let's pretend down in Florida just some wacko kid went berserk and killed a bunch of people with an AR-15. To think of the gun as the scary thing, as if that has to be done away with. What you're really saying when you say, we need to ban assault rifles, and almost everybody who says that is totally unfamiliar with them and hasn't been around them, because they wouldn't blame the thing if they did. But what you're actually saying is, because of what that person did with that thing, I want agents of the state to go to 3 million people that I don't know. It's actually more than that. I forget the exact numbers. More than 3 million Americans own AR-15s, and I'm one of them. What you're saying, if you say ban AR-15s, is that you actually want agents of the state, by the way, agents of the state who carry something that look a lot like this, except that switch has another position that says full auto, because they're M16s, and to most people cheering for gun control, they're already lost because they don't know enough about guns to know what I'm talking about. This is semi-automatic. It's not fully automatic. Machine guns have been illegal in this country for a zillion years, unless you go through jump through all these hoops and pay a huge tax to get a special license. Most gun control people don't know that because they're completely unfamiliar, because guns to them are just this weird taboo thing that they never experienced. But if you're cheering for a ban on assault weapons, misuse of that term, a ban on AR-15s, you're actually saying you want agents of the state to go with guns to 3 point whatever million Americans and say, you have to give them up because of what that guy did over there, or because of what a few people did. And the only people who would feel that way because they're not thinking. They feel that way because to them, this is an unfamiliar, scary thing. Unlike to tens of millions of Americans who are just like, oh yeah, one of those. Like I fired one of those, or I have one, or my friend has one, or something like that, where it's just a thing. And you're not scared of a thing. You don't demonize a thing. Hollywood and the media and those in government have gone out of their way to demonize a thing by making a whole lot of Americans have their only exposure to these is on the news and in scary movies and stuff. Instead of, you know, all the millions of people who just go out and shoot tin cans, and you can hunt with this, and, you know, you can't use that for hunting. Yes, you can. It's not the best for hunting, but it freaking works. But all the people who are used to it, and they go, you know, I've murdered a huge number of tin cans and paper targets with this. That's it so far. I haven't bothered to go hunting with it or with anything else. I'm just not into that. But to play on people's feels by making them scared of a thing, by making them have that reaction like, oh, that's that taboo, horrible thing, I don't want that to exist in the world, such that they will then cheer for armed agents of the state with guns to go try to violently take them away from 3 million people. Because, you know, like I've talked about a million times, that's what gun control is. Gun control is a euphemism for gun violence. For men with guns saying, only we, the gang of enforcers of the government, get to have these or anything like them. We get to have machine guns. You don't even get to have semi-auto. So we're going to come take them for the children. The only people cheering for that are people who are totally unfamiliar with it. And either that or they're so irresponsible that they think they would be psychos given one of these. And I remember before I had a gun, the awkwardness and the how weird it was when I first got a carry permit. I first started carrying a Glock. Obviously, I'm not carrying one of these around, but I first started carrying my Glock concealed, and I was hyper aware and conscious of I have a gun, because for a while that was weird to me. And I mean, I wasn't scared of it or I wouldn't have done it, but I was hyper aware. Now, whenever I carry, I'm still totally aware because it's really important that you stay aware of it and you don't leave it lying around like cops sometimes do.
Police in Seattle now investigating after citizens found an unattended assault rifle just like this one sitting right on top of a cop car. Excuse me? How would that happen? I hope Trace Gallagher has all the answers for us. What'd you find out, Trace?
You know, it's funny, Gretchen, because they showed this picture to some people in downtown Seattle and looked at it like, that can't be real. It must be photoshopped, which is why it's so embarrassing to the Seattle Police Department, because that picture is very real. That is a police-issue AR-15 assault rifle sitting there on the trunk, unattended, and there's no police officers in the vehicle at all. The guy who took the picture tried to find the officers to say, hey, guys, you got a gun in the back of the trunk, but he couldn't find them. So he flagged down 2 bicycle officers, showed the picture to them. They were shocked, and so was the Seattle Police Department. Listen.
We had a pretty serious piece of equipment left unattended. And I know that that's not what we set out to do during any part of our shift.
Just so you know, that rifle is supposed to be secured between the passenger and the driver in a lock position at all times, unless, of course, it's being used in that patrol car. Police are now conducting interviews with the officers involved in there to find out exactly why. Hey, you
just
see my gun?
you know, assault rifle sitting there, no cops sitting around. All of them standing right there, decided to leave their gun unattended, leaning up against a car. Passed. Looks like someone's finally grabbing it.
Yeah. The neighbor across the street is absolutely losing his mind because your rival's leaned up against a car. And that's what that complaint call was.
Oh, it's leaned up. Tell her who it was.
But the taboo, weird, scary thing about it eventually goes away. It's still serious. Obviously, it's a thing capable of harming and killing people, so you take it really damn seriously. But so is every car. So is every knife. So is every chainsaw. So is a whole bunch of different things. And nobody thinks that, oh, somebody killed somebody with a chainsaw, ban all the chainsaws. But it really is about people's emotional reaction based on their own lack of experience. And one of the best indications of this is when I've talked to a bunch of foreigners who believe in freedom and they believe in self-ownership. To them, they still admit that the idea of a normal person having a gun is weird, and they're not at all used to that because they're in countries where normal people don't have guns. Only law enforcement does. So to them, it's still this scary taboo thing. And to millions of Americans, it is too, because they're not at all used to it. And to other millions of Americans, it's just, well, duh. It's like millions of us have these. So what? You know, why are we to blame for what some psycho does any more than all car owners are to blame with what some psycho does with a car owner? And I know there are people who say, yeah, but guns have only one purpose. That's to kill people. Exactly. I own this, so I have the ability to kill people. Now, you can freak out all you want, but why do you think the cops have these and every other gun they have? So they have the ability to kill people. Now, I really, really hope I never have to kill somebody, but I want the ability. on the off chance that I find myself in a situation where my choices are either kill some psycho or let him kill somebody else. That's the main reason I have this and my Glock and the other things I have is so I have the ability to use deadly force. Because yeah, that's what they're for. But the childish attitude of nobody should have them because they're just for killing. Really? How about the cops? Why do you want them to? Well, they're special, but that's a dead giveaway, and it ties into the same thing. They view themselves and us as children. We shouldn't be armed. We're just the children. But authority, they need to be armed. They're special. They're magical. They're good. They're going to protect us.
Cop. Policeman. You understand? It's bad to shoot me. He's a cop too. It's bad to shoot him. Shit.
Who fired that shot?
Sergeant, that was me that fired the shot. We said, just
give me the gun. Now, when you learn to follow orders, you can have it back. Is this the Billy York informant shootout?
I don't know, I just got here. Wait a second. Hey, Larry. Larry! Is this the Billy York informant shootout?
No, check out the 3rd floor.
Thanks.
That goes along with having no experience and no familiarity with firearms is the idea that, well, of course you need government to protect you. You're not going to protect yourself because the people who don't have guns aren't going to protect themselves against somebody with a gun. They expect somebody else to do it. They expect government to do it for them. Whereas the millions of people who bother to have firearms understand that, no, if somebody's attacking me, I'm not going to dial 911 and twiddle my thumbs while somebody kills me while the cops are on donut break. I have the means to defend myself. That's why I had the things.
Oh, so we think that's funny, do we, Officer Davis? Well, maybe we'd all like to know what's so funny. Maybe Officer Davis can make us all laugh.
Say, why'd the guy give a name to his penis? He didn't want a stranger making most of his decisions. Thanks a lot. You've been great.
Make sure he doesn't get any donuts.
But it's such a different, even though it's in the same country, it's such a massively different perception of the situation between the people who have never had guns and never fired them and don't know anything about them and the people who grew up around them. Now, I'm sort of an interesting in-between because I didn't grow up around them. It was something that, to me, I remember it being taboo and weird to think of a gun. You have a gun? And now I look back and just think that's hilarious that I ever felt that way. And I still, I was still a believer in the Second Amendment. It was just an emotional thing, just a psychological thing because it's unfamiliar. It's like walking into a room and you have a pet tiger? Ah, what the hell? Well, if you find out that the pet tiger is perfectly nice and has never hurt anybody, then you're like, oh, okay, I don't have to be scared of that, but it was kind of surprising when I walked in the room and saw a tiger for the first time. It's the same thing. The first time somebody sees a normal person with a gun, it's going to be unfamiliar and weird and foreign and scary, just on an emotional level, even if they understand it intellectually. Like I was saying, I was talking to people from other countries who were like, I totally believe in the right to keep and bear arms, but I'm not sure what people would do because I've never been in a society like that. I've never been around a bunch of people who have guns. And I've been around some people who came to this country from somewhere else and had never seen guns before and, in private hands. And then they get used to it and they're like, oh, this isn't weird and scary and like it's a serious thing. You have to keep track of what you're doing and be responsible. But it's not just some magically terrifying thing. It's just a thing. It's just a thing. And yeah, if you do the right thing, things come out of it fast enough to kill somebody. So be really freaking careful with it. But guess what? Your car goes fast enough to kill somebody too. Be really freaking careful with it. And again, nobody would, see somebody crash into a crowd with their car and say, well, obviously people can't be trusted to have cars. 3-point-some million Americans have these. And another 100 million have other firearms too.
Oh, shit. Yo, I got this. Bitches, you crazy? My name is on Radiohead, too.
And it's almost exclusively the people who haven't had them and haven't fired them and haven't been around them and didn't grow up around them that have the reaction when they see something like a shooting of, we have to make those not exist. Because to them, they don't care. They haven't had them. It's not part of their life. It's not something familiar to them. It's like somebody saying, we have to make it, nobody's allowed to have a pet tiger. I'm like, well, if you never had a pet tiger and never wanted one, obviously you don't give a crap about taking away somebody else's. But if somebody else is like, I raised them from cubs and I've always been gentle and you're telling me people with guns should come take my tigers away just because you saw somebody getting attacked by a tiger? It wasn't my friggin' tiger. My tigers are here. They haven't hurt anybody. It's the same damn thing. There's 3-point-some million owners of AR-15s who are saying, my frickin' gun didn't kill anybody. I didn't kill anybody. This has never been used to threaten or kill anybody at any time. Well, not since I've had it, which was 94. I got it right before Clinton's stupid ban, which wasn't a ban, by the way. But it's just a mentality thing, and it's totally based on emotion and a psychological reality, or a psychological reaction that's based entirely on something being unfamiliar. And that's why they go to the children to get the children to go, we're scared of those guns, and get a bunch of people who've never had guns saying, we're scared of those guns, we're going to take them away. And then the ultimate irony is that they go to the biggest gang, the most heavily armed gang in the world, the U.S. government, and they say, take away the guns from those other people. Well, how about that huge gang? No, we trust them because they're authority. It's another indication that this is just an emotional thing. People who support gun control don't think about it. They feel about it. And you can see it in the children and the people who have these marches and your guns matter less than my life. Since when is that the option? When have I been shooting at you? My gun versus your safety, there's no conflict there. My gun isn't a threat to your safety, dumbass. And the 3 million other, however many million other Americans with AR-15s, about 100% of them are no threat to your safety. So this notion of disarm all those people because I'm scared of that thing that I've never had and have no experience with. It's sad that people are that easy to manipulate and lead around by their emotions and their feelses just because it's unfamiliar to them. But that's something that Hollywood and the media has pushed for ages and ages, and of course government too. And ask yourself this, if you think that you have an objective view of firearms, like you have a valid opinion on firearms and who should have them, is that because you think you have an objective view of firearms? If you've never owned one, and again, this was true of me when I was growing up, if you've never owned one, never fired one, or hardly ever, ask yourself, in TV and movies, how often do you see a regular person using a firearm to stop a crime, to stop a bad guy?
Everybody get on the fucking ground! Get on the fucking ground! Young ladies, get on the fucking ground! Open the drawers! Open the fucking drawer, young lady! Now step back! Very good! Someone's paying attention! Hey, let's go! None of him can't shoot you! Get back! Get your fucking back! How you doing back there, little brother?
Fucking killed him!
These concealed carry permits sure complicate a bank robbery, don't they? I thought it was payday.
Have you ever seen that? I know you see brave law enforcement using them to stop bad guys. Guess what? That happens the tiniest fraction of how often normal people use firearms to stop bad guys. Even the CDC accidentally, total leftist government agency, accidentally leaked a thing that said, well, maybe about 1 million times a year, average citizens with firearms prevent a crime with a firearm. Almost always without shooting it. They just demonstrate it, and the person who was going to attack them or rape them or rob them or whatever goes, "Ooh, I'm going to go somewhere else. I don't want to get killed."
No!
Det er ikke så lett. Det er ikke så lett å ødelegge for faren sin allikevel. Det er fordi du er råtten, skjønner du. Fy faen, du er så pinnråtten. Du er så jævlig råtten. Du er akkurat like råtten som alt annet her, jo.
So they admit that way more often than cops saving the day, normal people with guns save the day. But if that's not your experience, if you haven't seen that, because Hollywood never frickin' shows you that, then you will be scared of the idea of normal people having these. Whereas if you're one of the normal people who has these, or knows a bunch of other people who do, you're not scared of that. That ploy and that manipulation and that fear-mongering doesn't work on you, because you know not to be scared of a freaking thing. Be scared of the psycho who might use a thing, whether it's this or a car or anything else.
What can I do for you, pal?
Nobody move! Everything in the register now! Do it!
Louis, you're
Hey! Isn't anybody gonna arrest me or what?
So it's so sad how easy people are to manipulate by their fears and their emotions when it comes to things they don't know anything about and they don't understand. And they're so quick to cheer, "We need to ban these because I'm scared." Like, when you're scared and emotional, that is when your rational mind isn't working. So when you're scared and emotional, like right after a shooting, that is not the time to make up your mind, because you're not making up your mind, you're making up your feels about what you think about guns, and thought has nothing to do with it. That's why these pushes for victim disarmament happen right after shootings, because that's when people are irrational and emotional and all scared. And that's when the politicians move in and say, "Now will you let us disarm you?" And so it's just a matter of experience. So I would highly recommend to anybody, if you're a liberal and I want to ban guns, I'm going to put it this way. Before you advocate that men with guns go and forcibly confiscate these things from 3 million people that you don't know, find out a friend or a relative or somebody you know is going to have an AR-15. They might not be loud about it, but they have an AR-15. Ask if you can go with them to a firing range and either watch them shoot or have them show you how to do it, because know what you're doing before you pick up a gun. So go through the training and whatever, and fire it and get familiar with it, and then see if your feels don't change. Because I'm telling you, the politicians are completely relying on your ignorance and your feels to dupe you into cheering for something that they know damn well is not going to make anybody safer. It's sure as hell not going to make school children any safer. It's not going to make you any safer. It's not going to make the country any safer. Go and get some experience and then see what your feels tell you, and then see if your brain kicks in and you realize this isn't the enemy. This is just a thing. There are millions of them. The vast majority of them are never used to harm or threaten anybody. This is not the problem. A psycho whose brain is messed up enough that he will kill somebody, an innocent person, that's the problem. And guess what? Way more often than you might think, the people who do that wear badges. They are the ones that you're trying to get to have a monopoly on having guns. Let that sink in. When you cheer for gun control, you're not making guns disappear. You're making sure only government has guns. Watch a few videos about what police do with their guns, and then decide if you really want a world in which they're the only ones who are armed. Because open a friggin' history book and see what happens when the control freak psychopaths with badges have nothing to fear from their victims because they're defenseless. Go get familiar. Stop thinking with your feels. That's not thinking, that's feeling. Get some familiar with what the hell you're talking about before you advocate the initiation of violence against millions of people you don't know for having a thing that they've never used to threaten or harm anybody.